Good morning. It's been a minute. It's been a minute. Back to school, all that. Busy, busy, busy. I've just been sitting back and enjoying all of these 4th edition spoilers like y'all. Just trying to think about like what it means and just generally getting a sense for what 4th edition is going to look like. But let's talk about that more when we get into it, shall we? Thanks to my kill boss patron Panda. Wybarian makes good art. Check out his Instagram below. Buy some dice. Support the channel. Why not? If you're going to buy dice, might as well buy it with code MDG at checkout. Oh. So I think overall I'm optimistic for 4th edition. The team that made 3rd edition, which I love, is also making 4th edition. I love Age of Sigmar. I love 3rd edition. I have like the vast majority of the rules changes that have been made since I started playing. I've only been like, I'm about to play in a doubles tournament here in town, and I haven't. I played in the same tournament a year ago, and it was my entry into like the quote unquote competitive scene, but I guess just into the scene in general. So I've been playing Age of Sigmar with other people for about a year now. Before that year, I probably spent a good 6 to 8 months collecting a few models, learning the game, building my first army, and so on. But I've been sort of playing with my head above the water for about a year now, and I've really enjoyed all the changes that have been made. The 6-inch model coherency was a good change. The changes to Lookout Sir, good changes. Limiting rally to 10 wounds, good changes. I like that. So even when 4th edition goes live, I'm confident that the team will do a good job in balancing any issues that might exist, because of course there's going to be problems. Of course, it's a complicated game, it's a complicated system, it's impossible to play test until it actually goes live, where there's like, you know, thousands and thousands of players who are using it and giving feedback on it. So of course there's going to be little bugs and problems here and there, but I have confidence that the development team is going to do a good job in handling them. Seems like they've been doing a good job so far. The evidence would suggest that they're going to continue to do so. But more importantly, I know that the solid community that plays this game in my local area and online will continue to remain strong. I mean, why do you play Age of Sigmar? A big part of why I play is because of the great people that I get to play with. That's really the key for me. If the people that I played Age of Sigmar with weren't so awesome, I probably wouldn't play. And I feel like the community in Age of Sigmar is the best gaming community that I've ever come across in my entire life. The only ones that kind of rival it are, I've had some really great gaming communities playing MMOs, because I feel like MMO players and Age of Sigmar players have some things in common. Like, really what they're there for is to chill and have a good time and hang out with people. Like, it's a social thing almost first, as opposed to, you know, playing competitive Magic the Gathering, where it's kind of a mixed bag. It's like, you know, there's always your good people, you know, that are fun to play with and all this, but then there's also a lot of players that are like, you know, either hyper competitive or, you know, you know, like there's other kinds of issues. It's the same thing with D&D players. If you play D&D with players at a store, it's like, for the most part, everyone's pretty chill. But every once in a while, you run into like a rules lawyer or into somebody who, you know, struggles with social skills, let's say. So, I mean, as long as all the cool people in my local area and in my Discord keep playing, like, I'm going to keep playing. Even if 4th edition is a little bit rocky at the start, I have confidence that, you know, it'll be even better than 3rd when it hits its peak. I'm overall optimistic. So when it comes to 4th edition, I'm not hyper concerned with reviewing all the particular details and thinking about what this information actually means for the army. I'm gonna make some videos on stuff like this as I digest the stuff a little bit further. I mean, for me personally, I'm just sitting and looking at stuff like everybody else is. You know, I love watching The Honest Wargamer and his takes. I think he's got a lot of good takes. Hey Whoa, it's another person that I love checking out, right? Just listening to what he thinks about all these rules and all this. And but for me, to make videos like that, it's kind of like, well, you know, those guys already do it. So I don't feel like I'm adding anything unique. But it's hard to do it from an orc perspective or a greenskins perspective when we don't have all the specific rules. So for now, what I'm really doing is I'm just doing a vibe test. So, what something means for the game will largely depend on the context in which it is found. I hear people comment on various spoilers with either positive or negative comments, but it's hard to say for sure how things will play out without knowing all of the information. Therefore, what I am most concerned with right now is trying to gauge from this incomplete set of information what kind of philosophies or goals or directions the development team might have or might be going in. So this is just a vibe test. Am I getting good vibes from these changes? Do I feel like the changes are like interesting and heading in a good direction? Or do I feel like they're just making the game bad? That's kind of where I'm at now with this game. It's like, how do I feel about all of the changes that are being made without commenting on any specific thing? Because it's like, for example, it's like, okay, so we no longer give commands to other units. Units don't give commands to themselves. All of those ranges, all of that stuff is gone. So Mega Boss loses that ability where they can do it multiple times, right? That ability's gone. So I'm not going to sit and be like, oh, it's trash because the Mega Boss can't, because the Mega Boss is probably going to have a different War Scroll. They're probably going to take that ability and turn it into something else. So it's hard for me to say like this is good or bad or specifically how it's going to affect Auric War Clans or Greenskins in general because I don't have all the information. So I'm just checking for vibes, yo. So changes to the game. I think the game is going to change a lot less than people think. When they say that every War Scroll is being updated and that the game is being redesigned from the ground up, I think this is just marketing talk. Remember, the people that write the articles are not the same people that are writing the rules. They're just not. You know, you have like press teams and all that, right? So it could just be marketing talk. I personally would like for the game to be cleaned up a bit. And I have a feeling that's what 4th edition is going to be. It's going to be more like a trimming of the fat, a honing of the game, cleaning things up. So, for example, in your opinion, how long should a regular game of Age of Sigmar take? I personally would love to be able to play with other skilled players, other competitive players, in about 2 hours. That, to me, if I'm going to sit down with somebody and it's like, okay, we're practicing for tournaments. We're practicing playing quickly. We're playing with a chess clock, right? Like, ready, 1, 2, 3, go. I would like to be able to finish that game in 2 hours. If it's really close and nail biters, if it's really going to take a long time, 3 hours, right? Like, that's the longest I'd like for these games to go. If it's a Saturday night, we're having a couple drinks and I have some people over to my place and we're just kind of hanging out and chatting and we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the game and about our lives and other things. I'd love for the game to take about 4 hours. If I'm like, hey, hey man, come on over like at 6 o'clock or whatever, I'd like to be done by 10. My super casual, chilled, laid back game. I don't want 6-7 hour games. I don't want to go to tournaments and feel like I have a 3 hour limit and I have to rush. If I have a 3 hour limit in a competitive, like in a tournament, I would love to be able to sit down. And I personally like using chess clocks. The reason is because I just like to know how long I've taken personally. I just like to know how much time it's been for me, because playing within a certain amount of time, it to me is part of the skill. And if you can speed up all the little decisions that you have to make over the course of the game and like rolling dice and all this, then I feel like you can take a little bit, you can be more confident in taking a little bit more time when decisions actually matter. So if you've gone through your first turn super quick and your deployment super quick and when you get to turn 2, turn 3, you can kind of sit for a minute and really think because you know that you haven't taken that much time. So, but how long do you think the game should be? Here's another question for you. What do you think are the things that slow the game down the most? For me, I think that battle tactics are one. I've seen myself and other players sit on battle tactics and really have to sit and think and like go through the list and be like, can't do this one, this one's a maybe, this one's a maybe. And the second one is resolving combat. Specifically, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, but I think for in my opinion, those two things are the things that slow the game down the most. Tactics and resolving combat. Easily. Sometimes the spell casting phase can take a bit, but I think that generally speaking, tactics and combat. So combat's slow because some units have multiple profiles. For example, the brutes. if you're running 5 brutes, you have 3 different profiles to use. You're going to roll 1, you're going to roll the 2nd, and you're going to roll the 3rd. It's going to take some time. And that's really annoying, in my view. I think that you just want to be able, if you have 1 unit attacking, you want to be able to pick up all your dice and roll all your dice at once, where you don't have to split them up. They don't have different rend. They don't, like, the champion doesn't have extra rend. The champion doesn't have extra damage. All of it's the same. The champion can have more dice. Therefore, you're just like, okay, well, it's 5. They have 2 attacks each. That's 10 plus 1 is 11 for the champ. Boom, 11 dice rolling. Rolling brutes is really annoying. It can also be super complicated when you're trying to do pile-ins, when you have a big clump of units that are kind of all hanging out in the middle. That can be kind of a pain in the butt. The rules of like, oh, when you finish pile-in, each model has to finish pile-ins closest or closer or no further than the closest enemy. Like, we've all been there. It's like in the middle of the battlefield, you have this crush of like 6 different units that are in the middle, and you're like, well, this guy can go this way and this guy can go that way, but then I have to keep coherency, so this guy has to slide. Like, that's kind of a headache. It's kind of a headache. And then on top of this, not only do we have multiple profiles for units. Oh, and just one more note. I'm okay with multiple profiles with things that are like on mounts, for example, like Gorgruntas. I get it. The orc has a set of attacks. Fine. The pig has 1 set of attacks. That's totally fine. That, to me, that seems cool. Or heroes who have like 3 different profiles, like Gobsprag, for example, with like all these different things. That's all good and fine. You know, like, I get that, and I'm not saying that should go away. Just things like that are all fine. Monsters, right? All those things are totally cool. But one more thing that complicates all of this is when you're like, okay, well, my brutes are gonna attack in against 3 different units. So it's like the boss and 1 Gorhaka are going this way, so that's 2 different sets of rolls. Another Gorhaka and 3 are going this way, well, that's 2 more sets of dice that I'm rolling, and then the rest of them are gonna fight this way. So I end up having to make 5 different sets of rolls, wounds, rend, it's too much. So I have some predictions on how this combat's gonna play based on the rules that I've seen. I have some predictions, and I'm gonna make a video about that, and I would love for you guys to check it out and let me know what you think. And not only would I like you to let me know what you think in terms of, like, if you think that my prediction is going to come true or not, but I also am curious to think what you would think if this is how the rules of the game were to actually play out. So, Moss, I think your prediction is correct, and if this happens, I would hate it. It's gonna be the worst thing, Moss Dog, if this comes true. So I'd love to see your opinions, because fundamentally that's why I started this channel, was to learn and get better, and I continue down that journey thanks to y'all. Battle tactics. This is another area that I think has slowed the game down considerably. I also do not like that players have to seriously consider which tactics they are trying to accomplish during list construction. I do this. You do this. When players ask me if lists are good or if I like their list, one question I always ask is, what tactics are you going for? And if players are like, I don't know, it's like, well, you need to figure that out first, because if you're like, there's no good tactics for me on turn 3, then I say, well, then you probably got to change your list so that you can actually get your surround and destroy. You can actually get your intimidate, right? Like, things like that matter. That's one of the reasons why the almost why a Gnash Tooth is better than a Swamp Kala, or it's one of the reasons, like, it's one of the pros for the Gnash Tooth is he can actually do Let into the Maelstrom, right? So it's like, that's another tactic that you can do. Blizzard is better, right? But again, it's there. I would much rather build my list around unit types and battlefield roles. I would much rather build my list and be like, okay, I want some cavalry on the flanks, and I want some anvils in the front, and and not have to consider, like, battle tactics and all that. It's kind of annoying. I don't think it's really good for the game. I don't think it's, like, good for list construction where we're all just building around, like, whatever the seasonal battle tactics are for that season. And I think other players too, like players that are lower on the skill end or that are lower on the competitive style, so those that like more thematic armies or they just like to play the units that they enjoy, I think that they shouldn't be punished because they're playing those. It's like, oh, you're not like hyper whatever optimized for battle tactics. Okay, you lose. Like, I don't think that's good. So I think that getting, or at least addressing that in some way would be good. Also, battle tactics make players take weird actions that they might not otherwise take. For example, keeping some units idle on the side of the battlefield so they might be able to achieve surround and destroy. Those units should be flanking. They should be taking objectives. They should be doing the things that they would be doing, like they should be productive on the battlefield in other ways and not just sitting around hoping to get a couple easy points on round 3. Like, that's lame, right? It's lame. Same thing with magical dominance. Like, oh, I go first. Oh, easy tactic. Oh, you go second. Oh, no, easy tactic for you. Like, it just, I don't know. It just feels weird. I'm not like, it's fine. Like, it's not terrible. Like, if it didn't change, I would be fine with it. But, like, I know it's going to change. And so, at this point, I'm almost like, I would almost rather it just change. Just to try something new. And we'll see what happens, you know? Again, checking for that vibe test. Let's see if we're heading in the right direction. I don't want to build lists around tactics anymore. I don't want to spend a million years thinking about which tactics to pick anymore. And I think we're probably heading in that direction. And we'll see. Like, we'll see. People say that it's going to be like 40k where there's cards, and it's like, well, we'll find out. Right? Like, we'll find out. Oh, double turn. If you double turn, you can't get a tactic. It's like, okay, like, I don't know. Like, let's see, you know? Like, let's try some stuff out. Yeah, I am hoping that we at least see something different. Even if it doesn't work very well, I'm confident that the design team will make improvements over time. That's kind of where I'm at with this. Priority. Reasonable Age of Sigmar players agree that we need to keep the double turn as part of the game. In a melee movement-based game, you can't have a you go, I go. It doesn't work. People don't really understand this, particularly people who don't play this game. But if it's like you go, I go, it's like, okay, my cavalry can move 10 inches, and then there's like a 7-inch charge, let's say, on average. So I'm sort of thinking about, you know, the probabilities as I get into that charge range. But you're too far away. So it's like if I go 10 and charge 7, well, you're 20 inches away. And so I don't want to do a 10-inch charge. So I know that your movement speed is the same. It's 10. So I know that I don't want to end my turn. Like, I want to be 20 inches away from your cavalry when I end my turn. So, because you're too far. So I'm just going to sit here in the back. And then you're in the exact same position. You're like, well, I'm not going to go forward because I know my opponent gets to go next. But with the double turn, it kind of changes that up. You can play 4, you can play around, you can play 2 be double turned, and that changes the game significantly. And I think it's necessary. In 40k, it's like you shoot me, I shoot you. So it's different. But in this movement melee-based game, which is definitely what they're going for, you just can't do it. So I'm happy that the design team will be playing with balancing this in the game. The double turn is here to stay, and it can use some tweaking and some adjusting and some playing with, and so I'm glad that they are. It's fine the way that it is right now. Like, I don't have really a problem with it right now, but I'm happy that they're going to be trying to improve it and play with it a little bit more. I think it's good. This is the same thing for drops when we're talking about priority. Battle Regiment sucks. Battle Regiment sucks. Let's be honest. It sucks that all players are kind of forced into going into this 2-drop route or not getting to pick who goes first. So if you're an army like Big Wa, for example, and you're like, well, I want this extra enhancement. It's like, well, then you're definitely always going first. Or if you want the Andorian Acolytes Battalion, it's like, well, it's just bad for the game where it's like, oh, everyone's 2-drops. Everyone's 2-drops at the end. So again, I'm happy that they're going to be playing around with this mechanic in the next edition, and I hope that it's not like it's okay if it's part of list building where you want to be super low drops, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm excited. I think it'll be good. And then we're getting rid of bravery, and we're adding in this new mechanic called control. So that's good. Bravery as a mechanic was not interesting. It was either irrelevant, like with inspiring presence. It's like, oh yeah, whatever, extra command point, no big deal. Or it was absolutely devastating. I played a league game a week ago, and I was playing against the Stormcast Eternals model Ionis Cryptborn. And Ionis Cryptborn has an ability that shuts off inspiring presence and rally. It's called Draconic Horror. Enemy units cannot receive Rally or Inspiring Presence commands while they are within 12 inches of this unit. And so being a destruction player with low bravery, it's like you knock off 2 or 3 models and it's like, oh, you can't do Inspiring Presence. It's like, man, like that hurts me so much as a destruction player. And it's just sort of out of left field. Like these abilities are not super common where you can't take Battle Shock or you can't use the Inspiring Presence during Battle Shock. But man, it's either, like I said, it's either nothing or it's absolutely devastating. So Control sounds way more fun. I'm happy that they are opening up this design space. It also, yeah, I don't know. It's like, okay, maybe there is some kind of like, you know, like if you've lost a bunch of models, then you lose your control. You know, maybe if you've lost five models in a round or in a turn, then, you know, their control counts for 0. So you can I don't know, like, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be good. Command abilities. The new list of command abilities looks sick. I like, so far so good, I think. I like the idea that we both get a certain number of points to spend in a turn and not in a round. We can predict which ones our opponents are going to be using and then try to play around that. We can create these interesting game of like prediction, play around, which will hopefully make for some very interesting games. It's like, oh, okay, so my opponent is playing this army, whatever. This is the board state. They have 3 command points, whatever it is. And my prediction is that they're going to do this, this, and this. And then my opponent is thinking to themselves, okay, so I can predict that my opponent is going to predict that I am going to use this, this, and this. So instead, I'm going to like use this instead because they're not going to see it coming and it's going to mess up their plan, right? Like, I don't know, to me, it seems like it could be very interesting. I also like the idea of removing the range of giving commands. I think, again, this is just something that is going to help clean the game up a little bit, where you don't have to worry too much about, like, you're still going to have to worry if things are within range of other things, right? Like casting spells, giving out other buffs. Like, again, we're not sure because we need to see the actual war scrolls of everything, but you still got to be within 12 inches of a war chanter to get Fix and Beat. You still got to be within 15 inches of a war chanter to get Violent Fury. You still got to be within 12 of Weird Knob to get Hand of Gorked, right? So it's not like we're just saying like, well, all the models can be anywhere on the table, it doesn't matter. But what it does do is it means that your flankers and your battle lines and things like this don't need to be within certain ranges just to get things like Inspiring Presence or All-Out Defense. It also means that if all units essentially are elite and can issue their own commands, we're gonna have some winners for sure. Some war scrolls are gonna get better for this reason. That was originally one of the reasons when Big Pigs first came out that I stopped playing them. I'm like, well, this guy can issue his own commands, and that's a really big deal because he can't like auto run 6 when he needs to, and he can't, you know, do all these things. So if, you know, we're gonna have some winners and some losers. So I think it's okay. Like, I think it's okay. I think it'll be easier for newer players too. It's like, yeah, you can just use all these commands and you can use them on any units, you know, whatever, and it's all good and all fine. So, but there's still other abilities, right, that have to be within range. So we'll see. We'll see. We're just taking the vibe test here, right? I also really like the idea of taking more actions on your opponent's turn. I think it's a very good idea. I know we've all sat through that hour-long double turn, and that's not a good play experience. Like, going back and forth is definitely the way that we want to do it, I think. Like, combat works that way, and that's really good. You know, it's you go, I go. That's really cool. So I think that more of that in the game is better. Like, casting spells on your opponent's turn, amazing. If you go first and you're like, I'm not casting spells, your opponent's like, uh-oh, that means they can cast them in my turn. And it'll be weird if like I don't know how it's gonna work with like the priority and everything, but is it like you know, your opponent on their turn casts all their spells and then, you know, because they have priority, and then it's your priority, so then you cast spells, or do you get the last say in the magic phase on your opponent's turn? Like crazy. Can't wait to see it. Can't wait to play it. So results. So overall, I'm feeling like the things that needed to be addressed in AOS are being addressed. I think that all of those things are getting attention. So we'll see what the complete package of changes in 4th editions looks like and how it works out. And I'm sure, of course, they're going to need to be refined further. It's a given. It's a given. The core rulebook is going to have erratas when it comes out. We all know that's going to be true already. And people complain about that and say that that's bad. And from, like, buying books as a perspective, I get it. I get why it's bad. But on the other hand, it's worse if they didn't do those changes. It would be worse if they were like, no, we're sticking what's in the book. That would be worse. So I'm excited and happy. For me, they passed the vibe test. Like, subscribe. Wah.